Thank you very, very much. I want to thank ALEC profusely for this award. This is certainly one of the highlights of my professional life. ALEC is a wonderful organization, and it has been revitalized and is moving forward under the great leadership of Alan Smith. I think we should commend Alan for his leadership. Actually, my first contact with ALEC came in an association that Dick Armey and I had, and although Dick in a much more exalted role than me. In the first decade of ALEC's existence, I did a study for the Joint Economic Committee of Congress on state and local taxes and economic growth. And it was noted by the ALEC leadership, so they printed 7,000 copies of it, which is more than I've ever had printed of anything else in my life, and distributed to the four corners of the land. And at Seattle, 18 years ago, encouraged by veteran tax cutter Lou Euler, who's sitting in the front here, and others, I spoke to ALEC, and I've been a participant at every annual meeting since. Picking up on what Dick said, in the same year that the man for whom ALEC derives its underlying principles, Thomas Jefferson, wrote the Declaration of Independence, Adam Smith wrote the transcendental foundation work of economics, The Wealth of Nations. Now, in it, Smith showed, as Dick said, how individuals pursuing their own self-interest in producing and exchanging goods and services unwittingly advance the well-being of others. He taught us also that government barriers to exchange, like tariffs and other regulations, tend to reduce the wealth of nations. Nearly 40 years ago, I made my wife, Karen, who's sitting in the front with my daughter, Bennett, Karen, stand up. My family will stand at this point. Anyway, I made my wife, and this was a trying moment in our marital relationship, traipse all over a churchyard in Edinburgh looking for Smith's grave, and so to receive an award in his name from my favorite organization is a great honor. It's a particularly great honor, in spite of his snide comments about me, to be on a stage with Dick Armey, who is an old friend and fellow warrior in the fight for saner public policies. From his beginnings in North Dakota in 1940, Dick has become a true American hero that has not been given adequate, proper recognition. Hey, Dick, yeah, I've got to tell a story. Can I tell the story about economists in North Dakota? There is an economist in North Dakota story I have. A woman went to the doctor complaining of headaches. After tests, the doctor informed her, "Madam, I regret to tell you that you have a cancerous tumor and only have 6 months to live." The lady said, "Doctor, isn't there anything you can do?" He said, "There is nothing I can do medically, but I have some advice." She eagerly said, "What is it, doctor? What is it?" He said, "Marry an economist and move to North Dakota." She said, "Why would I want to do that?" He replied, "You won't live a day longer, but it sure will seem like a long, long time." Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher successfully questioned the excesses of the modern welfare state in the 1980s. And Dick Armey, as much as any other single individual, advanced that cause in the 1990s with the Contract for America and other great moves. Dick was also an academic economist who more than a decade ago presented something called which I call the Army curve, and he does too, frankly, which in a single graph displays what ALEC is all about and what our mission must be. The curve shows the relationship between the size of government and the size of the economy. No society has ever prospered without some form of limited government. At point A on the graph, this is economics lesson 101 today, folks, government does not exist and the economy is small. The economy is likewise very small at point B. No society has ever prospered where government dominates our economic life. Both anarchy and extreme communism lead to poverty. There is some size of government, point C on the graph, that will maximize output and the standard of living. Some people would call point C the optimal size of government. But research shows us that we're roughly at point D, at a point where reduced government spending and taxation would raise our prosperity. The point that I made, by the way, in my very first talk to ALEC in 1991, a speech I could give today without changing a single word, in which indeed I intend to do this afternoon at the Fiscal and Tax workshop. Things haven't changed. So, among other things, ALEC is about getting us from point D to point C. Our government's simply too big, and we need to find ways to make it smaller. There is going to be a fiscal tax fiscal, whatever the hell they call it, task force this afternoon at 2:30, and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to talk more about it, so come and hear us. But I'm here to talk about another topic. You can leave now, Dick. Because it's one that he knows less about. I mean, we both hate, never mind. Higher education. He was a college professor, but he got out of it because the politics were too brutal, became a real politician. I'm not kidding about that either. I have 13 minutes to talk. He went way over his time talking all this about resource restraints and all, and so he talked twice as long as he's supposed to. Well, what the hell? I'll do the same. I have tenure and you have term limits. By the way, we're going to have a dynamite discussion later on today at 11 o'clock at a higher education workshop that I am moderating that I welcome you all to attend. I'm going to do two things on my remaining time. First, I'm going to give you quite a few facts and figures about higher education in a few slides. Then I'm going to tell you how I, with the help of many others, including legislators like you, have been able to rip off taxpayers for 43 years. Now some quick facts. The first slide shows that average tuition levels in the United States. And it shows that over the 30 years from 1976 to 2006, tuition fees at public four-year schools have roughly tripled after correcting for inflation. Now, as this next slide shows, over time, revenues and thus spending per student have increased enormously even after adjusting for inflation. And then there's a slide for Texas, which shows that state appropriations have stayed fairly constant over time per student, but other sources of revenue have grown to pay the increased costs, including tuition, research grants, endowments, etc. And the results similar for other states. Costs per student are dramatically higher at not-for-profit schools, both public and private, than at the for-profit universities like the University of Phoenix. And a small minority of college spending actually goes for instruction.